we've had a really lively, informative start to our session, and we're looking forward to getting the next panel going. Next panel, differentiators that win the battle for trust and visibility in a hyper-competitive environment. That's a mouthful, so I'm going to read it again. Differentiators that win the battle for trust and visibility in a hyper-competitive environment. Looking forward to this discussion. In my opening remarks, those of you in Chicago and Raleigh, I talked about the importance of diversity of thought and multiplicity in tackling business challenges today and collaboration. And we've got a very diverse audience here. And the next panel is also going to represent some very diverse and unique opinions. I also have the honor of introducing our moderator, Rick Newman. And Rick, you can start and get set up while I just do a very brief introduction for you. Rick is the chief business correspondent for U.S. News and World Report. He's also the author, and I don't have a prop for you, Rick, but he's the author of a 2012 book titled Rebounders, How Winners Pivot from Setback to Success. For those of you that read Rick's bio, it's impressive. He's known for plain explanations, plain English explanations about the changes, the drastic changes, the huge changes going on in our economy today. And I know we all appreciate that. I also know, putting his panel on the spot a little bit, he's probably going to say to them, give me some straight talk answers back to his panel discussion and his questions today, so we expect good things. But just a little bit more about Rick is take a look at his bio. TV commentator, plenty of awards. I'd love to get his ear about all of his previous work experience and life experience working with the Pentagon and associated writings. Very, very impressive. I also want to encourage you, because I spent some time there yesterday, if you want to learn a little bit more about Rick, go to his website, which is rickjnewman.com, and you'll learn more about Rick and even Rick on Rick. So, Rick, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can welcome your next panel.
Thanks, Luke. Just don't go to my website now. We want you paying attention to the panel, not looking at your devices. Since this is not the Academy Awards, why doesn't everybody just walk up all at once? And I'll just get your seats, and I'll just introduce you guys as you walk up. I'm going to start with Matt Gentile, who's the third one walking up here. Matt is Director of Public Relations and Social Media for Century 21. He was involved with Super Bowl ad campaigns in 2012 and 2013, and he is apparently a social media geek who has actually figured out how to make money for his company on Twitter and Facebook. Paula Davis, to my left. Paula is president of the Alcoa Foundation and a vice president at Alcoa. Before that, she had senior roles at companies like Pepsi Bottling Group and Siemens, involving marketing, corporate communications, and managing media people like me to the extent we can be managed. And in the middle is Ron Locke, Senior Vice President and Managing Director of the Sustainability Consulting Practice at Gibbs & Soul. He's been here since 1987. He's done a million things, and he is the co-author of the annual Sense and Sustainability Study, which gauges the perceptions of more than 2,500 consumers and corporate executives. So I'm going to kind of highlight three trends to kick off this discussion. The first is that there's an overwhelming amount of information out there today. There's just an enormous amount of clutter. We all deal with it every day. I deal with it as a journalist every day. I contribute to it as a journalist every day. And it makes it difficult for everybody to get good information and to convey good information. So that's number one. Number two, we heard about this a lot in the prior discussion. Nobody in America trusts anything or anybody anymore, basically. And I don't think that's unique to corporations. I think Americans do not trust institutions in general, and there are good reasons for that. We've just been through this horrible recession brought on by apparently big banks, big companies, big government. No one's quite sure. They just don't trust institutions anymore. They do trust the military because they see the military performing well. They look at other institutions and they see them performing poorly, or at least they think they're performing poorly. And it's clear in a variety of surveys that trust in just about everything has gone down. And number three, it's been a very difficult business environment, as everybody knows, for the last 5 years. So as a journalist, I'm a skeptic. And to me, the job of companies, especially during tough times like this, is to make money, period. And all this other stuff we've kind of been hearing about is secondary. We know that many companies have stayed profitable not because their business has gone up or the revenue has gone up, but because they've cut everything they can cut. So I'm going to try to bring that into this discussion. So first I'm going to start with Matt, and I'm going to ask Matt about information clutter. How do you break through the information clutter? Everybody knows you have to, or thinks they know you have to use social media these days, but I see a lot of people not using it very effectively. So go ahead and talk about how you break through the clutter.
Sure, and thank you to Mary Buhay for inviting me here today and the opportunity to speak with you. And first, just to get some housekeeping keeping items out of the way, interest rates are historically low. It's a great time to buy a home. If I don't start off with that right out of the beginning, I'll be in trouble back at the corporate office. So I just want to get that out of the way. Thank you, Rick, for bringing that question to me. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of skepticism in terms of how does social media drive business. In fact, since we're promoting our websites, I do have a website. It's called The Social Guy. I was the PR guy. I knew a little bit about social media, so now I'm the social guy. So I wrote an article yesterday, in fact, what is a social media guru, right? And because we have 100,000 agents around the globe, and in the U.S., we get solicited because they're all independently owned and operated. They're getting solicited constantly by folks that tell them social media is going to drive your business revenues by X%, and it's going to increase your your contacts, your leads, et cetera, with very little results, very little proof of that. So, part of my job is to understand what is available in the social media space and then apply that knowledge on their behalf. And what we've done, and it's two different things really. From a brand level, is to be able to provide, good content that consumers are going to interact with and engage with, right? So, and there are a bunch of different engagement metrics that you look at as success. And you can literally track it from the top of the funnel to the bottom and convert all the way back to our .com. However, I think the point that you're really trying to get to is, looking at it from a local level perspective, and our leadership team from the top bottom says, you have to really build that relationship at the local level, right? Your trust, the innovation, everything that you're getting from Century 21, who the brand is established with your relationship with your local broker and agent, right? So, Century 21, the brand, can kind of establish goals and metrics and aspirational. If you've seen our advertisements on the Super Bowl, we position the agent as kind of almost superhuman, able to, leap tall buildings in a single bound, if you will. But in reality, at the local level, it's that trusting relationship that you have with that agent that's going to create that value equation for you. Now,
Matt, let me ask you, can you give us a couple specific examples of how you do that through social media? I mean, I use Twitter, and when I get every time something labeled as sponsored content shows up, I'm like, oh, now they got Twitter too, and I'm like, delete, get through that, and get to the real information.
Yeah,
I mean, how do you?
Absolutely. One of the things we preach to our system members, our sales professionals, is don't just spam people with their listings, right? You'll see you're somebody who's not very accustomed to using social media for marketing. All of a sudden, you'll start getting 5 or 10 listing pictures on your Facebook page because you're a friend with them. So immediately, you have to kind of use education to help them understand what is going to provide value to the consumer like you. So, what we're doing as a brand is we're providing community-based market updates on a monthly basis. So we encourage them. Here's a video market update that you can take from our .com, embed it into your own marketing, give your customers the knowledge to say, okay, the prices have risen X% up or down over the past month, number of homes sold. That's the type of value content that a consumer cares about, because I want to know, what are the prices in my neighborhood selling for? And I can get that from Zillow and Trulia and the other aggregator advertising type sites, but it's different when you're looking at it from a holistic perspective, and you can really see it month after month after month. So that would be one example.
Do you offer 10% coupons off the price of your next home purchase?
No, for you. We'll talk to me after the show.
So I'm going to ask Paula about corporate reputation. So we hear we hear a lot about how important corporate reputation is. I'm going to push back on that. There are a lot of there are some companies that are terrifically profitable that don't have great reputations. ExxonMobil, for example, tobacco companies, and you can kind of tell from their postures they just seem to have retreated into a shell that says, you know, we're profitable, screw you. That's not the corporate statement for ExxonMobil, but that's their attitude toward journalists sometimes, and that's fine. They make a lot of money. And they reward their shareholders. So, Paula, I'm not going to ask you to be an apologist for Exxon, but tell me why corporate responsibility still matters.
Yeah, because I think there really is such a thing as earning a social license to operate. And I'll give you a few examples of that at Alcoa. So, for example, in Jamaica, we have a mine there, and unfortunately, we were under the halo of the industry, where there was a huge distrust among the community there about mining companies. And so we had disruptions to our business that were costing tens of thousands of dollars every day. We went out with a very bold community relations strategy, and we started engaging citizens and asking them through a community advisory board what was important to them in terms what were their concerns on the environment, and having these difficult conversations. Learning what the economic needs of the community were, that they weren't trained appropriately for jobs that we had available in some cases. And we reached out to their kids in schools and started educating them about what Alcoa does. And at the end of the day, we ended up reducing our disruptions at our facility by over 95%. So that immediately speaks to this idea of earning a social license to operate. No longer can you go into a market, especially as a manufacturing company, and build a wall around yourself. That is not a model that works anymore. You have to go in as if it's a marriage and engage the community, and not just when times are good and you're growing jobs, but also when you're facing difficult jobs. You need the buy-in of your constituencies there.
So that's a case where you had an active problem. Tell me why it matters on a more proactive basis to put the effort, the resources into this kind of thing when you don't have a problem, and you don't even anticipate there's going to be a problem, and money's tight.
Yeah, so I mean, we have a couple of our communities where we've wanted to expand our operations. Cleveland, Ohio, and Australia, and you need public support for that. And sometimes we've been able to secure, for example, tax incremental financing or public funding for our projects. And the only way to do that is to engage your stakeholders there, from the public and from your citizens. If your citizens are complaining and they don't trust you, they're not going to give you that license to operate. And they're voters, so the public officials who are making decisions on your business care.
Ron, can you tell us what's actually happening at companies? How are they coming up with the resources to put into this when resources are so tight?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd like to ask, do you promote when you go in, like the mining site? Was that well promoted, or is that just something that is kind of behind the corporate wall?
No, so we go in as if it's a marriage. So, for example, when we went into the Amazon, I mean, obviously there's a lot of environmental implications there. So when we went in there, we did a lot of research. We formed these community advisory boards and got citizens engaged in how we were going to grow the business there, how we were going to establish ourselves. And we kind of think of it as the day after the last day. So in 100, 150 years, when we're not mining there, what is the community going to look like? And we assuaged any concerns they would have there. So we didn't go in and say, all right, we're going to teach you skills for industries that you're not going to use, but they were, had cacao planting that we helped train them on, and there was infrastructure that needed to be built there. So, yeah.
And I guess I was thinking more broadly, to shareholders and that, because to get to the question is, first of all, companies are doing a lot of this, but they're not necessarily communicated externally. And so their public face might be, we're all about making money, and that's all that matters, leave us alone. And in reality, behind the scenes, they have a lot of sustainable practices happening. The way they're paying for it is oftentimes they're seeing a great return on it, seeing it as an investment. One of our clients is the Dow Chemical Company. And the energy savings that they have seen, the return on just their activities has been immense. Water conservation as well, immense savings back to the company. Then you get to the social license. If you look at all the studies for recruitment and employee retention, CSR plays a huge role there. And so if you look at the costs of replacement of employees, in recruiting employees, all of a sudden you can look at a balance sheet and say these activities actually do pay for themselves. But there is a reluctance among companies to be really forthright. Among sustainability geeks, we see these stories, but they're not well reported externally. And to a certain degree, sometimes that's because CEOs don't like to communicate that because they fear that they'll have greater scrutiny and greater expectations, and it's a never-ending story.
So you gave an example of when a company will do this because it's going to save money. It's going to contribute directly to its financial performance. Are companies, give me some tangible examples of whether companies are doing this when they're not sure it's going to contribute to financial performance, or it might contribute in some abstract way, but they're doing it because it seems like it's the right thing to do. Is that happening or is that not happening? And can you give examples of it?
It is happening, but I got to say the most successful companies are the ones that tie their activities to what their business is, what their brand is about. And a good example is Cemex. We have a representative here in the audience, but they're a cement and concrete manufacturer, headquartered in Mexico. And in the developing world, they go in, they have centers of self-sufficiency. They teach people how to make cement blocks that they can use to build homes, but also to start a business to sell those. And they learn the trades of building a home. So yes, they're creating a market, but they're also improving the social standing of these communities, which then has greater impact for all the other businesses. And so I think when companies go in, there's no certainty that that's going to have a huge return, but there is kind of an intuitive value there, and again, it ties to their business and is more likely to have success.
Matt, this all makes sense if you're a manufacturer and you're involved in or heavy industry or something that has a heavy footprint on the environment. How does sustainability matter for your company?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of the odd duck on the panel, I guess, but I think everybody has to look at it in terms of, how is your business model going to be sustained over time? And I think, for the past probably 20 years, companies and entrepreneurs have been trying to disintermediate the real estate professional from the real estate transaction. And, regardless of the fact that the internet, over 90% of consumers are coming in to their home search process through the internet, there's still a strong demand for that individual to sit, right by your side during what is going to be the largest financial transaction in most people's lives. So in terms of sustainability, I think, we're coming at it from a different direction, but in terms of providing value to make sure that the long run of the business model is still sustainable, we're looking at it probably through a lot of similar lenses.
So I'll ask all three of you, jump in however you wish. How are you getting your message across these days? What frustrates you about this cluttered environment? What are the new ways to get your message across other than just putting it on your website and hoping people notice, or issuing press releases that nobody reads, or supposedly the traditional things, TV advertising is less effective, less desirable in some ways, doesn't reach as many people. Everybody wants customizable outreach programs and stuff like that. So I'd like each of you to just discuss the most effective ways for getting your message across these days.
I think, for us, it's got to be a push and a pull strategy. So, putting out a news release obviously has become passive. And you try to have compelling enough content that you can pull people into a discussion. But importantly, there are a lot of conversations that are being had, like the one today, a lot of thought leadership opportunities. And so I'm an advocate of going out where the conversations are already being had. And if you, raise the CSR discussion to sustainability, that's built into what Alcoa does. When we go out and sell our products to our customers, it's lighter weight vehicles, it's more efficient airplanes, that's all aluminum. It's recycled content that saves a lot of energy. That's all built into our very value proposition and our operations, to your point about Dow. So, from my perspective, social media is great because it allows you to go to where the conversations are already being had, and that's one of our key philosophies.
Well, take us through that. Take us a layer deeper. How do you find where the conversations are being had, and what do you say as part of that conversation?
We consider who our stakeholders are. So, for example, you talked about recruiting. And when young people get to career planning and placement, they've made the decision on where they're going. They either know Alcoa or they don't, and a lot of them don't, because we're a B2B company and we don't advertise. So we're creating relationships with them through organizations that they care about on campus. So it's the engineering clubs on campus, it's the volunteer organizations that they go to. It's all of those kind of aggregating member organizations.
Well, I think step one is to hire a very good business communications agency. But then once you get past that, it really is finding those ecosystems, where everyone now kind of self-selects their community. And we talk about the global street fight. I mean, it really is, when you're talking from a marketing and communication standpoint, those battles are being fought street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood. And so there's no one, concrete answer to your question. It really is finding what community you're trying to influence, where do they congregate, and then having a relevant communications with them. And sometimes that means having alliances. I mean, one thing we're seeing more is private enterprise teaming up with governmental and non-governmental organizations to have those conversations. And driving communication sometimes by yourself. We create private social networks sometimes, where you have a community of people who want to have a business conversation. Having that conversation on Facebook or LinkedIn would be like having it at a tavern where everybody can overhear and comment. So creating a community for maybe your supply chain partners, for example, so that you can have those business conversations with all the benefits of a social network.
Does advertising still matter? Matt, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I would say, I heard your comment about television advertising, and I'll come at this in a couple of different ways. I would say, for everyone who has the means to do it, I would encourage you to advertise on the Super Bowl. That seems to be a pretty powerful medium still. So yes, I think television advertising does still matter. The way we've approached it, and I can take you back, to 2008 when I was still in Sarasota, Florida, prior to coming up to New Jersey. My wife is still a little angry with me about that, but when I heard about the job, I was working for a competitor brand, and I did some research in terms of where, what the president was saying of the company and so forth, and I had to go about 6, 7, 8 pages deep into Google to find a digital interview with the president and CEO of the largest real estate company in the world. So I knew right away there was an opportunity here for a good PR guy, and I was already working on the social media end. So I looked at that as wow, what a fantastic opportunity for the brand, right? So from a brand level perspective, we look at it in a 360-degree, spectrum. So you have your Super Bowl up here, right? But then, we weren't really doing anything with our customers down here. So, in terms of how do you get out, how do you break out of the mold and make an impression with a consumer, or in our case, we're a franchise sales company, so we want to attract entrepreneurs to open up additional Century 21 franchises around the United States, around the globe. One of the ways that you may not be aware of, what I would consider more down on the bottom of the circle is, we did a campaign with EA Sports, where we literally did some online gaming. And you've probably heard a lot about this, but we literally placed an office where gamers could come in, they could earn currency from the transaction of real estate in the game. So that's one way you kind of break through the clutter and reach, again, who's your audience? So in this case, our audience for social is 25 to 34-year-old female, and the statistics bear that out from the National Association of Realtors, but and you have to have, I think, some sense of real life experience. I can tell you how much influence my wife had on our home purchasing decisions, and it was great. So we knew that was the right target, for that layer of communication. The sellers, the move-up buyers, the investors, I still, that the average age group moves up. So I think you're looking at different mediums to reach that audience, and that's where I think the power of television, more traditional mass media, still has a place.
Matt, how did you develop your expertise in social media? Do you have a master's degree in social media?
No, it's funny you mentioned that. In that post I was telling you about, I wrote yesterday, I said, I was kind of making fun of the fact, what is a social media guru? Because you hear that term bandied about it quite a bit. And there is no current master's or doctorate in social media marketing, right? You kind of gravitate toward it through experience. And, I learned from, the greatest thing about social media, and I think the power of it comes from, you have access to everyone on the planet, basically, through one social network or another. So your ability to learn, the best techniques is out there. You just have to kind of plug into it. Now, what is applicable to the brands and to the companies, to the agents and that sort of thing, you have to kind of play in the space and learn what works and what doesn't. There's no, quick and easy short path in learning from your mistakes. I think that's probably the easiest answer to that.
One more question I'll ask. I get the impression that there are a lot of social media consultants trying to sell their services to corporations simply because they've been on Twitter for 3 years and they've ginned up 100,000 followers or something. Is it difficult finding people who can actually educate you in companies about what in the world's happening in this very odd and rapidly evolving universe?
Yeah, I'll start that. Sure. Yes is an easy answer. You really have to do your research, I think, and I'm constantly, not necessarily warning, but cautioning our brokers out there, don't get sold on the flash, right? You have to really dig a little deeper and understand the metrics behind what they're selling. If they're going to guarantee X amount of website visitors, that's a solid KPI that you can look at and say, yeah, that's going to have a fundamental increase in my potential business. You can't just say, you're going to grow, I'll grow your Facebook fan by $100 and I'll charge you $5 a fan. And that's literally a legitimate business model that we're seeing pitched to our brokers and agents out there. But the value of a fan is everybody has their own definition of that. So I think you really have to dig down deep into the metrics and understand, does this person have experience in the business plan that I'm trying to put forth, and really quiz them on it and force out that, force them to come back to you with proven case studies.
I was just going to say, the data analytics is so important. Nobody has the single answer because, again, it's evolving and there's self-selecting that's going on, but you have to base it on analytics, micro-targeting, and, from a strategy. And too often, social media is a tactic in search of a strategy. And you really have to base, your approach to anyone that you want to influence and have a conversation with, based on what the most sound strategy is. And in some cases, social media is the biggest part of that. In some cases, it's not. But you really have to figure that out first. And I think there are a lot of consultancies out there that, will sell you a single, avenue, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. And, again, that's a tactic in search of a strategy.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of social media is you can try a lot of different things and it's cheap. But you have to start with having it aligned with your objectives. Who are you trying to reach, and what are you trying to accomplish? So just to go out there to do it for, to be bold. If you're known for being a marketing company, that might make sense. But, I would err on the side of trying to be strategic.